Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So I know I've been kind of MIA for the last 2.5 weeks, and that is because I gave birth to little Oliver. So that's kind of where I've been. And actually, this is the longest break I've ever taken from YouTube since I started YouTube like 2.5 years ago. I actually don't even remember how long I've been doing YouTube. It's been a while, but I've never taken this long of a break. And I was actually planning on filming earlier, but I sat down to film, and no joke, I heard like water. It sounded like someone had turned on a sink in my living room. And at first I thought, is that Oliver peeing? And then I walked out and I was like, that can't be Oliver peeing. He's just like this little teeny baby. And I walked out, and I'm not even kidding you, there was water pouring out of my ceiling because the people upstairs turned their washer on and overfilled it and left the house, and the washer didn't recognize that it was full, so it just kept filling and filling and filling. And I'm not even kidding you, there was water coming out of my ceiling, my lamps, my electrical sockets, and I was just getting ready to film. I was like, are you serious? So then the second time I got ready to film, I was sitting down getting ready to film, and then the fire alarm went off, and I'm like, I think this is like the universe, God's way of telling me it's not time to film. So I've just kind of been MIA, just enjoying my family and enjoying my baby. And I've had a lot of you guys asking about my labor and delivery. And so I thought I would do a video kind of just sharing with you the story of how Oliver made it into this world. I'm going to go back to my normal schedule of videos next week. So if this isn't interesting to you, I would just click out right now, because I'm basically just going to be sharing with you guys my labor and delivery story, but I will start beauty videos up again next week. So yeah, I'm just going to share with you guys my labor and delivery story. Okay, so I did have Oliver early. I was 37 weeks and like 4 days. You know, people had said, oh, it's your first baby's gonna be late, but I just kept having this feeling that he wasn't gonna be late, that he was actually gonna be early. 2 weeks ago to this day, actually, it was about 4:30 in the morning, and I woke up to, this is like a little gross, but I woke up to like a gush of water, and it wasn't a lot. I wasn't really sure, but it was 4:30 in the morning. I was like, Byron, there's like a little bit of water on the bed. So I called the doctor at around 5 o'clock in the morning. He called me back. I told him, you know, hey, I had like a liquid coming out of me, and he said, you need to come into the delivery room. I had my hospital bags packed. I pretty much had everything ready to go for the most part, with the exception of like a few little things that I wanted to get, and I was pretty prepared because I just kind of had this vibe, this feeling that he was going to come early, and I felt like I needed to be prepared. So we got our hospital bag, we packed the car, and we went, and I texted my mom, and I said, Mom, don't, panic, because I'm going to the hospital right now, to the delivery room, and they're just going to check me out. I got into the delivery room, and they began to kind of check if I had dilated, if I was, effaced, if, like the normal signs of labor, and I was not dilated. There was like nothing. I was having contractions like every 15 minutes or 10 minutes. And I couldn't even feel them. So they weren't sure what was going on. They tested the fluid, and it wasn't showing up as amniotic fluid. So I was thinking, I'm going to be going home, right? They're going to send me home. I was even texting Nikki saying, let's go to Victoria's Secret. They were having a sale. They were having the Victoria's Secret annual sale or whatever. I was like, let's go to the sale. Let's get our nails done today, because I'm probably going to be sent home within an hour and a half. So the doctor came in, and he said, the test is coming back negative. It's not amniotic fluid. You're not dilated. There's really no signs, but we are going to check your amniotic fluid via an ultrasound. So they did an ultrasound, and my amniotic fluid was low. And at that point, that kind of concerned the doctor, because that did kind of seem like maybe I had a leak starting from higher up, whereas opposed to when your water normally breaks, it starts below. And that's why you have that gush of water. Mine kind of had a tear at the top, so it was trickling down really, really low, and or really, really slow, rather, not low. So they were concerned at that point, because my amniotic fluid was a little bit low, nothing like crazy, but it was definitely getting low. So the doctor said he was going to do another test. It was a little bit more of an extensive test on the fluid, and that came back to be positive for amniotic fluid. So at that point, he walked in, and he just basically told me and Byron, hey, listen, when your amniotic fluid starts to get low and obviously we've tested the fluid and it is amniotic fluid, your risk and the baby's risk for infection and death go up significantly. So I really, really trust my doctor. He's the same doctor that delivered myself, my brother, and he's like the most popular doctor at my church. He has literally delivered hundreds and hundreds of babies at my church. He's just a really awesome doctor, and he's recommended by all my girlfriends have gone to him. So I really trusted what he said, and he's like, if I send you home, there's a chance that you can get an infection and something bad could happen. And so he's like, basically, we're going to induce you today. And he left the room. I kind of started crying a little bit because I was scared at that point. I kind of had a feeling that Oliver was going to come early, but it was scary to think that it was going to happen today, right now, and that they were going to induce me. And I was worried because I was 37 weeks and I kept asking, like, is he developed enough? Like, is it going to be okay? And they kept saying, you're full term, it's okay. Well, they ended up coming back to me about an hour later and saying, actually, according to your ultrasound, we're moving your due date up to the 15th. So it ended up being that he was 38 weeks and 3 days, which made me feel a lot better than even 37 weeks, because that meant that he was like a week farther along than we had initially thought the entire time I was pregnant. The ultrasound was showing that he was a little bit bigger than what we had thought. So that eased my mind a little bit, that he was a little bit older and I didn't have to worry quite as much. At that point, they took me into the delivery room. They put something called Cervidile inside of me, which is basically it ripens your cervix. They put that inside of me, which Byron said I looked like the Exorcist when they were putting that inside of me, because it's a long story, but it hurt. And they put that in there, and that was in for 12 hours. And that basically just kind of prepared my cervix, thinned it out, and it's called ripening the cervix. That took 12 hours. In that 12 hours, that also got contractions going. Now, contractions weren't crazy strong for me, but I had to be induced via Pitocin. So there was really no other option. Once your water breaks, basically what happens is the baby does not have cushion anymore, and the risk for infection goes up, and they like to get the baby out within 24 hours. So I was a little worried that things were going to go fast. You know, I had watched The Business of Being Born, and although I had planned to have a epidural, and I had made certain decisions for myself that were different than The Business of Being Born, I felt like everything that was happening was like the opposite of The Business of Being Born, like Pitocin and all these things that initially all I cared about was a healthy baby, but I was, these were like the words that when you hear it, you're like, oh, okay. I, was getting a little nervous, but they said, we're going to induce you via Pitocin starting at 12:30. And she said, once the Pitocin hits, your contractions are going to get extremely strong, close together, and they're going to hurt. And so you can get your epidural anytime you want. It was 12:30 at night at that point, and I had been there pretty much all day, and I really wanted to get a good night's rest. I was going to get the epidural anyway. I had planned on that from the very beginning, and since they were going to start me on Pitocin at 12:30 p.m., I figured I'll just get the epidural before they start the Pitocin. That way I can just get a good night's rest. Cross my fingers, hopefully I can get a good night's rest. So I got the epidural. I was a little scared at first because I thought, epidural, it's like a huge needle going into your back and you're like, honestly, it just felt like a tetanus shot in my back. And I was having contractions at that point. They weren't anything crazy. There were definitely contractions that I could handle and breathe through, but the epidural hurt way less than even the contractions did. So once I got the epidural, I started to feel kind of like this warmth in my legs, almost kind of like I was in a jacuzzi, and that felt good. And I could still feel the baby, but I couldn't feel any of the contraction pain or uncomfortability. So I fell asleep. And then when I woke up, she came to move my legs, and it was really strong at that point. Like, I was watching her move my legs, and they felt like elephants, like huge elephant legs, and they were like Gumby legs. And I told her, I was like, this is really strong. And at that point, what some of the side effects of epidurals are, you get kind of like the shakes. So I was shaking, and then also I was a little nauseous. So they gave me an anti-nausea. They tried to warm me up so I wasn't shaking. And obviously, these are like the side effects of an epidural. So I told her, I was like, the epidural's a little too strong. Can you turn it down a little bit? And she said, sure. So it was at a 12, so they turned it down to a 10. Once they turned it down to a 10, I was golden. I felt great. I felt like I could move my legs still, but I couldn't feel any pain. I didn't have the chills or the nausea as bad. So I fell asleep for the entire night. And I figured when I woke up in the morning, I'd be at like a 6 or a 7. I would have been dilated about a 6 or 7, and I still had a ways to go. So I was on Twitter just kind of letting you guys know, updating you, hey, it's probably going to be a little bit longer before the baby comes. When you're induced, it's a little bit of a longer process. So I put my phone down. The doctor came in and he checked me, and he literally looked at me and said, all right, it's time to start pushing. You're 10 centimeters and fully effaced. And I was like, what? Like, I literally just woke up from sleep. I literally woke up to them saying it's time to start pushing. So it took about a half an hour for them to prep the room. They sent in the first nurse that helped me at the very beginning the previous day. And Byron, me, and the nurse, we just started pushing. And I could not feel anything. So I was like pushing. I was making jokes. I was like, let's put some Beyonce on in here so I can like push to Beyonce. And the pushing kind of felt like I was doing sit-ups. So I pushed for an hour and a half. So it was kind of like doing sit-ups for an hour and a half. And I kept thinking in my head, like, what's going to happen when this epidural fades? Like, I'm going to be in a lot of pain. But I didn't care at that point because she had her arms like all the way inside of me, both arms. And she was like helping to get the baby out. And I just kept thinking, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I can't feel this because I would be a hot mess. So, and major props to any woman who has ever had a natural labor because I just like salute you because I was watching that go down and I was worried about what it was going to feel like as soon as my epidural faded. I pushed for an hour and a half. He finally, crowned. They brought the doctor in. My pelvis was a little bit tilted, so they had to, and he never does episiotomies, this doctor, ever. But I had actually requested on my birth plan that instead of tearing, I personally wanted to have an episiotomy. So they gave me a episiotomy, which is basically like a little cut, but the baby was still having a hard time coming out because I had a tilted pelvis. So they took the vacuum and I pushed one more time and they sucked him out and they put him on my chest. And at that point, I was like in awe. I was like, this is my baby. And he started crying. They took him away really quickly and Byron went over and watched them clean him off and they asked for my permission, if they could take him away and do what they needed to do. Then they brought him right back to me and I started breastfeeding him. So we did skin to skin. I started feeding him and then within an hour they had me in the room upstairs in recovery. My epidural wore off in about an hour. And actually what was funny was, they had told me that once you deliver your baby and you're done with that, then you have to deliver the placenta. And so I kept saying, when do I deliver the placenta? And they were like, girl, you're done. Like, you're sewed up. You've delivered the placenta. You've delivered your baby. You're done. I was like, I'm done? I didn't feel anything. Like, it was actually, if I could give birth again next week with this same exact birth, I would totally do it because Oliver handled everything really, really well. They had him monitored the entire time. I kept kind of worrying because people had said like with Pitocin and an epidural, the baby's heart rate could drop, but he was handling it really, really well. Everybody has different experiences, and everybody's bodies are different in how they handle different things. But for me, it was a really pleasant experience actually. And, I just felt like it went really, really smooth and just for the circumstances, it couldn't have gone any better than I had, kind of planned in my head. Once I was in recovery, you do bleed and it is a little bit uncomfortable, but it was nowhere near as painful as kind of what I had anticipated. The day after, I definitely, I took a Motrin or maybe 1 or 2 Motrins throughout the day. I took a Motrin and then I think 5 hours later I took another Motrin because I was like kind of feeling it down there. So it wasn't like amazing feeling, but it wasn't nearly as painful as what I had thought it was going to be. So I was cuddling Oliver. I was able to get up and walk to the bathroom and things like that. By the next day, I was doing way better. And I actually went home that day. So once we got home, they had mentioned to us that Oliver was getting a little bit jaundice in the hospital, so they wanted us to put him in sun and things like that. And at that point, my milk hadn't come in, so I was kind of just feeding him colostrum, which is, for those of you who don't know, it's like the pre-milk. We took him in the next day to the pediatrician, and his levels just kept rising. And so they basically said, you need to take him to the hospital, and he has to stay at the Children's Hospital and get treatment for jaundice, which was really difficult, to be honest, for me. And I didn't realize at the time that that was super common. So we were in the hospital 2 nights, 3 days with Oliver being treated for jaundice with, it's like a little UV light blanket. And we had to feed him, and my milk came in that day when we checked into the hospital. So I started pumping every 2 hours to just build my supply. Eventually, we only had to supplement for a few feedings, and then my milk was coming in and I was able to feed him my milk, which made me really happy. And it was just hard because I didn't get to hold my baby. He had to stay in the blankets. He had like little eye goggles on, and it was just sad to see him in there. But I had a lot of support from you guys. You know, people had said this is really common. You know, I had so many tweets of people saying my baby had the same thing. We were in the hospital. So that really lifted my spirits, because it's just hard to see your baby in the hospital. You don't know what's going on. It's your first baby, and you're kind of like a little flustered. You can't hold him, and there was really nowhere to sleep. So me and Byron weren't sleeping, and we were worried to fall asleep because he was in the blankets, and it was just a lot. So anyway, we were there for 3 days, 2 nights. We came home, and you know, besides the flooding in our apartment, which was a little bit of a crazy thing, the last 2 weeks, you know, we've just had a lot going on, and now we're just starting to get settled and into our schedule. And Oliver's doing really, really well. He is a pretty good little sleeper. I mean, he just wakes up when he's hungry, and so I feed him and change his diaper and put his swaddle on and put him back into bed. And it's just been amazing. I'm just loving the time with him. It's really been awesome. It's kind of crazy because it's like I'm a mom now, and it does really turn your life upside down in a matter of a day. So I'm going to do a lot more mom videos, like mom reviews, and talk to you a little bit about the things that I've been using postpartum and, you know, all that stuff on my second channel. But this was a highly requested video for this channel, so I thought I would share my story with you. He's a little naked.
Yeah, he is.
Okay. Peanut. So this is my little Oliver. He was born January 3rd, 2014. So he's 7 pounds, 1 ounce, and 20 1/4 inches. All right, you guys, so thanks so much for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next video.